So Kuudes has been their one of their partners and their design partners in designing the school from inside to the brand experience, spanning from the website to their spatial design and the identity of the new school. But first I'm going to start by telling a bit about myself and the company where I'm coming from. So I think that will also maybe tell a bit more about our kind of perspective and background on how we did the project at the first place. But just a bit about myself first. So as said, my name is Susanna Ollila, and I'm currently the head of service design at the design agency Kuudes. So that means I'm leading the service design competence in our company, and I see myself still as a lot of a designer, hands-on designer, doing service design in my daily work as well, and facilitating different kind of design processes. So I started, or how I ended up in service design in the first place was around 10 years ago. I was studying in Aalto University in Helsinki, and I ended up doing this design thinking program with Stanford University that Aalto University is doing, and I ended up being at Stanford D School and learning about design thinking from the best teachers and interesting people and companies that were doing service design in the name of design thinking already then. And then from there I started my career first with the city of Helsinki in their digital development unit, and from there I kind of moved on to the agency side and have been working in a digital agency in Helsinki, and now in this interdisciplinary design agency Kuudes that I'm gonna tell briefly about in more detail. But please feel free to connect with me in LinkedIn or Twitter or email. I will have my address also in the end, so if you want to ask any questions, I'm happy to answer those. But yeah, so about Kuudes, the pronunciation comes from the number 6. So Kuudes means number 6 in Finnish, and the name comes from that our agency used to be on the 6th floor of the building where it was founded 15 years ago. And it's actually the same building that our office is at the moment. Unfortunately, now I'm at my home office due to the circumstances, but the name comes from that story. And we call ourselves an insight-driven creative consultancy. So we see that we're not a service design agency as such, because service design for us is more like the mentality and the methodology and the way of doing things in our projects. So it's not everything that we do. So we do a lot of different kind of design disciplines. And we believe that our mission is to do meaningful concepts that have a positive impact on people's lives. So whether they are new products or new services or new spaces, we always think about how we can understand people better and understand how we can improve their lives in different kind of areas. So how does that happen in practice, or what does it mean? We have actually 6 teams in our company and 6 different competencies that we combine in the projects that we do. So we have our own research team that does both quantitative and qualitative insight work. And then we have our strategists that do different kind of brand strategy and positioning and strategy work. Then as said, we have service designers who are designing new concepts or service models or service innovations for company. We also have visual designers who are doing different kind of branding work or new identities or new packaging for food industry or whatever it might mean in that context. And then we also have our digital designers, so UX UI designers who are working with different kind of digital clients from the public sector to private sector and developing new innovations in that area. And then also we have interior architects who are then designing actual spaces, especially in retail contexts, but also in different kind of office spaces and working environments. So when we're talking about multidisciplinary design, this is what we mean. So actually we can deliver different kind of designs in very different kind of channels to our clients. So of course we also do only service design projects or only identity projects, but then sometimes we have the opportunity to combine these different teams and competencies in projects that clients have this kind of wider needs and contexts. And how we look at kind of insight, if we're talking about insight-driven design agency. So what do we actually mean by that? Because insight is always a vague word. I think it can mean in so many things. So I think how we see it is through this 3 corners and the opportunity that we have in between them. So we of course always research the values and motives and aspirations that people have in their everyday life. So what kind of values really drive them? What are the kind of unchanging or slowly changing values that define people's personalities or the way they act? And what are the different kind of trends or phenomena that influence on people's decisions? So it might be new technology that is available or new megatrend that is around the world that has changed people's behavior. And then again, we are looking into what people do in practice. So what is their everyday life in reality? Because we all know that sometimes we like to think about ourselves differently than in what we do in practice, as this photo also shows. So many times if we do only research based on values and motives, we kind of lose the other aspect of what actually happens in practice when we go and test things with people, or when we go to people's homes and kind of research what they do in everyday life. So that's why we need both of the sides. We need to understand people, and then we need to kind of validate the understanding and test things in practice. And we believe that between these two, there is this huge opportunity gap that bridges these 2 opposites. Sorry if you can hear some voice in the background. It's my new kitten, and he is not very happy that I'm doing this presentation, but it's not a child or anyone is not being abused in the other room. Okay, so to the next slide, just showing briefly that, as said, we have this really in-depth research in our company. So that means that we are actually doing our own consumer research. So we have the informed consumer research. You can find it in our website, Kuudes.com, the informed consumer. So if you want to find more about it, but maybe this also tells about the kind of in-depth level that we are doing research. So we've been actually researching Finnish people for over 10 years. So we started with this 8 Windows to the Future study, and we've been doing updates on the consumer field ever since. So we're doing both quantitative research and then qualitative research. So doing interviews and going to people's homes and researching what are people's motives and what kind of things they value. And we have grouped Finnish people into 9 different user groups that we can, or segments that we can use in different kind of projects with our clients, with their own data and user segments, or then use the kind of data and insight itself in different kind of contexts. And we've also done this study actually in Sweden, because we're working a lot in the Nordic markets, and that has been done ever from 2017. So this is also kind of one thing that maybe differentiates us from what many others are doing. So we have our own research competence and research as well. And then kind of before moving into the case, I was thinking of just showing quickly like 3 different examples of, so what kind of things could this multidisciplinary design mean, or what kind of projects do we do as a company? And of course, I know there's an international crowd. Probably many of you don't know these clients, but just more like as a context. So what kind of design context do we operate in? So firstly, one thing or one kind of project that we do a lot is creating these holistic brand experiences spanning different kind of channels from digital to physical. So that's also the kind of case that I'm going to talk about today in more detail. So the case with the Hive Coding School. So in this case, we were working with one of the biggest retailers in Finland, so the K Group, and they were building this new commercial center in Helsinki, and they took us as their partner to think about what kind of center do we need in this part of the city. So it also already had this really big shopping center, so we have this kind of real estate property and we want to build something new, but what would be the appropriate kind of services that we need in this kind of area? And we did a lot of research and went to talk with the people who were living in that area and asked them what they want to have in the services, and did a lot of benchmarking. And actually this was like a 5-year long project from the very beginning until when the shopping commercial center was opened, and we ended up designing the brand identity and the digital services and the actual building interior design. So this is one of those projects where we had almost every part of our 6 design teams involved. Then another kind of example, so especially in service design, of course, what we as service designers, many of us do, is trying to kind of reinvent companies in a way and innovate new kind of service offering and services for our clients. So in this case, for example, we did a project with OP Insurance, so one of the biggest insurance companies in Finland and a bank, and we were investigating how could we provide new value in this really specific segment, so professional drivers, B2B segment in the Finnish market. So we dig in deeper to this one user segment and kind of found their needs and aspirations and develop new kind of service offering based on those. And then third kind of project might be this really deeper customer insight-based project. So for example, Arla is one of our biggest clients. We've been working with them, I think, for 10 years, developing new kind of diary product positioning and innovation and branding. So Arla is a really big diary product producer in the Nordics, and we did B2B kind of a brand strategy and positioning based on really kind of wide inside work in the European market for Arla Pro. So previously Arla Pro had been kind of been in the shadows of the consumer business, and they wanted to also lift the Arla Pro's kind of position along different kind of restaurants and professional chefs and professional kitchens. So we did inside in 7 different markets that we then used in doing the branding and positioning work. Okay, but that's kind of briefly about the background about me and Kuudes, the company that I'm coming from, and next I will start talking about the actual topic for today's talk, so about the Hive Coding School. So I'm gonna talk today about the story behind Hive, from how the idea came to our client Supercell, what has been our design process and as an agency behind it, what have we done in the inside and design part, and what kind of methodologies have we used, and then I'm gonna talk about the results. So what did come out of this design process and what has been the impact after the school has been launched. And along the way, I'm gonna share a few kind of designer notes or tips about inclusive design, and on those parts also, as said, you can ask questions or write them to chat. So I hope we can keep the conversation going on. So please feel free to ask anything that comes to your mind.
Basically, you can type in the question as soon as it comes to your mind, and we will just pick them as soon as the time is appropriate. So you don't have to wait until we ask next time for the question. And if you have some questions about the experience of Susanna, of her work as a designer, about the company, about the projects she already mentioned, just feel free to ask the questions.
Thanks. Yeah, but yeah, to the kind of challenge and background where we started from. So I think this is a global problem or phenomenon that we have. So there's a huge need for skilled coders, and they're in really short supply at the moment. So in Finland alone, we'll have a shortfall of 25,000 programmers by 2025. So that means that we need a lot more people to get interested about programming, and we need a lot more programmers both from Finland and outside of Finland. And the demand will grow by thousands of every year. So it's a massive situation. And it's not about just the games industry that our client Supercell is working in, but it's in every single industry. So I think all of us know, many of you are service designers or working in the field, that technology is defining more and more every aspect of our life in wherever industry we're going. So this is a global challenge that we all have to solve somehow. And I think part of the reason for this is that our society also has had a very narrow view on what coding is about. And maybe for those reasons, only a small amount of people apply for these coding positions and decide to become a coder in the first place. So we've kind of maybe in a way understood coding in a bit different way that it has been supposed to understand in the beginning. And we tend to think that it's for kind of math geniuses, but actually coding is about much more, and there's many more other skills that you need to have as a coder. And this was kind of the starting point for Supercells too, and why they wanted to bring this new kind of coding school to Finland. So they had noted this huge challenge and heard about this new kind of coding school in Paris called the École 42, so the School 42. And this school was founded by a French millionaire, and the school addresses all of this kind of new skills and ways of working that you need in modern work life. And it's a different kind of school from many other coding schools. So the school doesn't have any teachers, so it's based on this peer-to-peer learning model. The school is online and on site. So the school is open 24/7, but you have to study at the school. So it's impossible to study from home. And the current situation is a bit demanding for the school, of course, and they have to think new ways of working in these kind of different kind of times. But normally the school would be open every day and you have to study there. And they have this gamified curriculum. So you have this kind of game 3 that you're processing with different kind of coding skills along the way and during your 3-year studies. And you don't need to have any prior experience in coding. I also tried to do the test when we were doing this process, and unfortunately I didn't manage to complete the test, but it's basic problem solving. So it's about understanding actors that influence on other actors. So all these tests have been built so that you don't need to know coding beforehand if you have the kind of proper problem solving mindset and that kind of skills that are needed. And the school, this model has been replicated in about 10 campuses around the world, but there hadn't been any in the Nordics. So that's how the CEO of Supercell, Ilkka Paananen, kind of decided that they want to launch this initiative to bring the school in Helsinki and in the Nordics, because we really have the demand on such kind of new education and new kind of school. And that's how Kuudes, our design agency, also came along. So Supercell chose us to be their kind of inside partner and brand partner to do the brand experience concept based on user insights, and then also doing the identity design and naming for the school, the digital design of their website and communication in the website, and doing their spatial design of the school building. So this was done during a 1-year-long project starting from the beginning of 2018. The school was launched in the end of 2019 and started in then. And during the 1.5-year-long project, we've been working tightly together with the client's team. So of course, it's been a huge collaboration and with other agencies that have been part doing the communications or or the social media marketing, or the kind of coding, the actual school website. So there has been many partners involved. And when we started the project, the objective was to get 2,000 applications for the school first year. And in the end, you'll find out what happened with this objective. But how was this possible? From our end was, of course, that we, from Kuudes, we had a big team of people. So we were almost 15 people. Not everyone is in this picture, but from Kuudes working with the project. So there were a lot of different kind of skills combined, from service designers to interior architects and graphic designers, copywriters and strategists and whatnot. So it's from our side, it's also been managing these different kind of design disciplines and how we work together and how we make sure that these insights that we find in the beginning of the projects end up being in every aspect of the design that we deliver to the client in the end. But when we started doing the project, we used a variety of explorative insight methodologies to tap into the mindsets of prospective students and learn about the problems with tech education in general. So we interviewed opinion leaders working in the tech and education fields. We compiled a trend and positioning analysis from different kind of technology companies and education companies working in the field, and conducted different kind of workshops with the client's management team. And we started off with this trend mapping and benchmark to understand the kind of wider context that we were building the school brand in relation to the topic. So we weren't just looking into coding as such, but we were researching topics such as what are the future work-life skills, what are the needs for future education in general, and what are the kind of future requirements for tech people in companies. And we wanted to validate how the Ecole 22 concept would serve businesses and employers' needs in the Finnish market, and what were the biggest challenges and opportunities relating to getting people interested in coding. So of course we wanted to understand about the students, because that was the main point. How can we get more students apply to the school? So we did a questionnaire with the coders working at Supercell, so we could understand like how people have ended up working coding, and what were the kind of coders themselves, how did they think about the profession, and what kind of people are needed, what kind of skills are needed. But then we thought that if we only talk with the coders, we're just gonna kind of find the information that people who are doing coding already know. So we decided to go and interview also high school students. So just normal young kids who have nothing to do with coding and who did not have any brief beforehand of what we were even doing the research about. So we went to talk about what were their kind of future aspirations, what did they want to be when they grow up as a profession, or what they're going to study after high school. So really open-ended questions about their life in general. And as said, we were also doing a lot of this benchmarking, and someone might be thinking at this point, so there's kind of already these Ecole 42 schools around the world, so what's the big deal about bringing this new school to Finland? So can they just kind of found the school and started? So why did kind of Supercell even ask our help in the first place? So as we were looking at these different kind of sites, these are from other schools around the world. And of course, they've been doing really great work with this coding education in general. But we noticed that the way schools many times communicate tends to be this kind of tech branding. So it means like using really hard colors or black colors, or kind of emphasize people doing coding and computers and engineering. So if you look at these sites, they already communicate a certain kind of story that the tech field is actually perceived at the moment. And although we understood there were a lot of these stereotypes about coders and codings, we didn't expect kind of the results being so dramatic when we were doing this different kind of user insight. So surprisingly, the perception of coding as a profession from people outside the industry was almost the direct opposite to that of people inside of it. So as we were talking with high school students, they thought coding had to do with maths, gaming, and was seen as a really solitary profession. So some people were like, it's not something that I would never do. It's people just coding alone in their apartment or office and just working with a computer totally alone and away from the other world. But then again, when we're talking with people who are working with coding and doing coding, they actually stated the opposite, that coding is a really social profession that requires proper skills in group working. You have to be very well in communicating, especially if we're talking about commercial coding and working in diverse teams and problem solving in general. So these two worlds, from coders and from people, and for especially the high school students around the coding community, saw this kind of field really, really differently. And because of these stereotypes and how people might perceive coding, many people who would have talent for coding don't even try and don't end up even applying to this kind of education. So through our inside work, we realized that we needed to kind of redefine what coding as a profession is about. And we needed to tell a different kind of story about that through our design work. And we needed to show these new kind of role models that also include women much more strongly. And this is one of the quotes from the high school students that we were talking with. So the kids and high schoolers really had a different kind of perspective on what coding could be about. And as we were doing this work, we also segmented and built 4 target group profiles for potential students based on 2 motives for applying to study coding. So people who thought coding is more like a mentality and way of doing things, and people who thought that coding is more like a means of doing something else that they want to do in life, and people who were passionate about doing their own thing in coding or already in some other profession, or people that were kind of open to new and they didn't know what they would do with their profession or with the coding skills in general. So we wanted to create this kind of new kind of profiles, not just based on people's age or gender, but in general, like what kind of different motives would the students that are applying to the school have. And these motive-based profiles have been used in building the brand, into other partners developing for example, the communications and launch campaign and digital services and the school spaces. So they've been in the different kind of partners have been using these as well. But yeah, for the one kind of first designer's node on the project, so maybe I think design in everything that we do, the first thing to note is actually by doing code design, we already create these kind of power structures. So I think we as designers and service designers also have this responsibility to define and include different kind of people in these design processes, and also suggest different kind of user groups to take involved in this service design project to our clients too. So I think that's one of the findings, that if we wouldn't have had for example, high school students in the project, I think our findings would have been really different. So it's really important actually when we decide who we're gonna take into the inside phases of these projects. So that can actually define the direction of the insights and the outcomes a lot. And it can be more comfortable sometimes to include only the people that are gonna give you this kind of simple or comfortable answers. So that might also drive you or drive people to take only certain kind of people or target groups to the design processes. But I think it should be kind of in our service designers' DNA to kind of understand and take really different kind of viewpoints into these processes. Do you have any questions or comments at this point before I continue?
I forgot to unmute myself, and I also already told my question twice. Sorry. It's okay. There is a question from my side. You picked quite a broad audience. So basically people who are not yet into the coding school, like children, and then the students, and then existing programmers. I believe you could also, for example, pick the ones who quit programming to have a perspective. But anyway, the more you think about it, the more target groups you can come up with whom you would like to study. But I believe you still have some limited resources, limited time frame. How do you pick the ones which you really want to talk to?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think it's always about going back to what do we want to achieve in the project. So in this phase, we wanted to create something really future-proof. So that's why we had these opinion leaders. So we wanted to talk with people who have been working in the industry for a long time and who kind of had this mindset that what's coming up in the next 5 or 10 years. So we wanted to talk to both to those kind of people, and then to kind of balance that off to talk with these students and people who had no idea about the coding as a field kind of in general. So I think it's important to have this really almost like opposing groups, not opposing in their opinions, but coming from really different kind of perspectives. So I think that already creates a different and interesting kind of framework for the insights.
Yeah, absolutely. It's my experience too. And
yeah.
Maybe you will be talking about it later, but you showed this perfect map of archetypes or personas or segments, which I like. And did the client pick the one which is more important, or you just had 4 of them and you were trying to design for every persona, every archetype? How does it?
Yeah, well, we didn't pick any of special one out of those 4 because the client really wanted everyone to get interested. So we have this kind of people that might be this hardcore coders, or then people who have already another profession and they're looking into coding as another way of kind of doing something new. So we might have, for example, a hairdresser that also wants to be a coder, and in the future maybe he or she can code a application for hairdressers or whatever. So there's different kind of needs. So I think all of those 4 have we've been talking about them in the design process and along the way that we want this, and our client wanted to have this really different kind of students in the school with different kind of backgrounds.
So would it be fair to say then that you designed a different onboarding path for every persona?
Well, not maybe onboarding paths, but we kind of, the point of the personas was just maybe to understand these different kind of motivations, that we understand that we're not designing for one single group of applicants that are applying, that we make sure in every phase that, for example, the website that we're designing, that it communicates both to the kind of already hardcore coders that might be interested, or then it also communicates to people that don't know anything about coding, that we address these different kind of needs.
Thank you very much. Guys, do we have other questions? Or there is a comment which proves that it's a good idea to target the students. But if you have more questions, just please ask yours. And I think for the moment we can move on.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, and the kind of next phase was to create this brand experience concept. So what would be the brand concept and background for the school based on all of these insights? So as said, whereas other coding schools around the world, besides this Ecole 42 models, focus more on an academic or technical approach, Hive's experience and brand was built to be very practical and passionate. So we wanted to create Hive, and Hive should be all about this inclusive community that is using code as a global language. And from this concept, the name Hive was born too at this phase. So it was a place where people are busily occupied and active, doing what they love and what they like to do. So I think the Hive's brand was born around this kind of using coding as a global language that unites these people who are studying and learning about coding more. And this idea also started to influence our design work and how we started to build the brand identity. So our graphic designer also took this idea of what is a global and inclusive language and was researching these different kind of ways that we've been using different kind of codes in the history of humans to communicate and tell about people. So whether it's about the traces that we leave or the different kind of writing or drawings that we've been doing as humans into the current day coding or different kind of images or emojis that we're using to communicate about different kind of words. So this has been a background to the visual identity. And so the identity was born on top of this idea to kind of celebrate the diversity and different kind of people and way to communicate. So also the main logo of the school is very different from what you would maybe expect from a logo. So not all of its letters are actually letters, but there are icons and different kind of signs. So the logo and identity itself is also a code that you as a kind of observer have to interpret and understand yourself. And as said, the goal was to set Hive apart from typical IT actors, for example, by avoiding these cold colors and hard lines that would normally communicate that this is a tech company. So instead, we made it look and feel colorful and creative and very approachable. So that was the whole kind of point and aspect in every piece of design that we did for the school, from the logo to the illustrations to the different kind of signs in the school building, and do all of these different kind of graphic elements, from stickers to ID cards or different kind of posters. And from here to kind of my second designer's note from the back end that we already maybe discussed a bit. So I think it's important that when we're designing these new kind of brands and brand experiences, that we don't only look at what others have done. So I think benchmarking and investigating what others are doing is always a good work or a good part of the design process, but we can't base our work for only to do that, because then we only see things that are already there and we miss out a lot. So I think we always need to look forward, include different kind of forward-thinking people, and observe these quiet trends and things that are kind of bubbling under, and also have diversity in the design teams. So I think it's really important, and in the Hive project it was definitely inspiring for me as well as a designer, that we had a really diverse team that was coming from really different angles, so from architecture to digital design. And as we came together, we started to find these new kind of ideas on how do we make this brand a reality, and how do we design these different kind of angles in the projects. And someone actually who commented maybe for our team that we didn't have a single programmer. Actually, in that time when we started this project, we didn't have programmers at Kuudes, and just a month ago we actually had our first tech lead started in Kuudes, so now we also have our own programmer, which we can use in our future projects. But unfortunately, when we started this, we didn't have a programmer in-house, but luckily we were working with our digital design agency, Siili, in this project, who was doing the coding for the school's website, and they were helping out a lot also in understanding their world. So do you have any other questions or ideas at this point?
I do, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
One is actually, I like this, well, I like what you say, that you shouldn't be looking only on competitors, you shouldn't be looking only on behind. But unfortunately, well, you probably heard it. Unfortunately, people don't know what they want until you show it to them. How did you tackle it? Because basically you were designing the school which never existed before in Finland, at least.
Yeah. Well, actually, yeah, we were. It's interesting as we were designing the brand, and when actually we were first designing 3 different kind of routes for the brand identity, which we do many times, and then the client. They are all, of course, based on the same insight, but they are a bit different kind of routes. So the client had to evaluate and think about which route will they choose. And I remember also when I saw this identity the first time from our graphic designer, because it's so different than what you're expected to see. So I think many people from our side and in the client side were like, what is this? So is this an identity? Is this a logo? What is this? And it was really kind of interesting. And I saw that this is something different I haven't seen before. This is super interesting. But I think also from the client side, they had to think about it a lot, because it was, as said, it's not something that you have seen before. So it took a lot of processing from them. So do we dare to kind of choose such a different route and such a different identity? So I think it's always, it requires also kind of a strong belief that you want to do something differently than others.
And basically speaking about your client, how did you engage with them during the process? Did you do the work on your own and then present it to them, or did you engage them in process of research? How does it work?
Well, we did both. So we had, as said, we have workshops together, and we had a lot of meetings together, depending on the different kind of phases. Sometimes our team was waiting with the client every week or every other week. And also the client was doing research on their own. So they were actually testing, for example, this identity with different kind of people, and testing the school's website with a few students as they were visiting actually the Paris school. So they were testing it with students that were there. So the client was really, really actively involved. And I think that's super important in getting any kind of proper results out of the projects, that we were working as a tight team together with the client's team.
Super. And basically you answered the last question I had, whether you tested the prototypes or not. So basically it's not even you, but the client did.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So going ahead, so to the kind of other results after the identity. So then for the school's website, what the brand meant in practice was a lot of content, such as videos and images and real life examples about what Hive is and what coding as a profession is all about. So our goal when designing the website and its user experience and content was to make everyone interested and excited about the topic, and ultimately, of course, to get people to apply to the school. And as said, Siili was our tech partner in building the school site. And the design of the website was a really iterative process and was looking something like this in these photos, as many of you probably working with UX and service design know. So we focused firstly on communicating the Hive approach to coding and tested this site with different kind of prospective students that had many different versions about the site structure and communications in the site, and how would the identity work in the digital sphere in practice. And so we first built the website for the launch. So the school was launched in Slush, and the response was kind of overwhelmingly positive. So Milton Communications Agency was the partner to design the launch campaign of the school, and they were approaching the topic in many medias, from the biggest medias in Finland to social media and influencers, because they wanted to especially get the students, who of course are many times young people, so they wanted to get their attention also in social media. And actually 1 week from the launch of the school site, 46% of the main target groups had heard of the school. And one of the main ideas when we started after that designing the actual school space was to make it look really playful and kind of not a school like. So if you think about what does a school look like, we wanted to make the school look like totally opposite of that. So students might be there 24 hours per day as said in the beginning. So it should be more like a home and not like an institution. And we of course wanted to make it a place where it would bring the whole Hive brand alive in practice. So it would kind of show and imply the brand colors and the brand feeling and the brand atmosphere in practice. So there was different kind of spaces for both individual work and group work and library for studying together and some kind of sports activity corners. So different kind of areas around the school space. And from here to the kind of third note, so kind of if we want to create this kind of inclusion and make sure that everyone feels welcome and invited in the design processes that we do as designers, we have to first kind of define exclusion. So understand in reality, so what are we doing at the moment and how are we actively or sometimes unintentionally excluding people at the moment. So for example, in the Hive's case, we were looking at, for example, in the application phase, that we were making sure that every page in the website had video or photos of real people coding, both men and female, but especially female, and different ethnicities and people working together. So we wanted Hive to be as relatable as possible. So we can't always assume that people understand what we communicate, but we have to kind of define what is exclusion and be really detailed and specific about how we make sure that we're not kind of doing it unintentionally in practice. I still have a few slides and then I can take a few more questions if you have. But going to the results of the school, and especially now I'm telling about the kind of launch campaign and launch results. So only 6 months after the launch in December 2018, 3 times more students had passed the online application than expected. So this means that there were over 9,000 applications to the school during the 6 first months. And the Hive website got almost 500,000 visits during this time. So it's a lot of interest in a country and like Finland, where we have 5 million people living in the whole country. And then they had the selection phase and an online test and invited people or the students to this 4-week PISIN, which is this application period where you come to the school and you are building new or coding new ideas together with other students, and you have interviews, and based on that they select the actual students to the school. And in this PISINs, so this 4-month kind of trial, 60% of the students who came there had not coded before at all. So quite a lot of people were really new to coding. So exactly what we were looking for from the target groups. So what do these numbers again mean in the Finnish market? So Hive got 4.5 times more applicants than the biggest coding major in Finland on that time. And actually it was interesting because that the Helsinki University, who is teaching coding, they contacted our client and said that they had also gotten a lot more applications and a lot more female applications, and they thought it had to do with Hive and how Hive kind of changed how much we were talking about coding as a profession and how people saw it in practice. And Hive has had around 34% of female applications. Normally we have like in schools there's like 15% of students are female, so quite a lot more females tend to be interested in applying to Hive. And as said, Hive has kind of started their journey in raising this awareness. Of course, Hive hasn't been able to change the whole coding and tech field overnight, but it has definitely started new kind of discussion, and people who haven't been interested in coding before have now started to take an interest towards the topic and coding as a profession. And I think in October 2019, the first batch of students started their education in the school, coding school in Helsinki, and they are a diverse group of 145 people. So interestingly, 55% of them had a profession prior to Hive, so or coding professions. I think interestingly, one of the students, for example, is a farmer who bought also this kind of grains that from his farm to other students when he came. So there are interesting combinations of people. So you can have two different professions, and you can maybe combine coding to something that you already know, like farming or teaching or cleaning or whatever. And of course, we feel really privileged as an agency to have been involved in this kind of project, and we are really looking forward to seeing how the students of Hive and how the whole staff of Hive has continued and continue their journey in this interesting topic, or in bringing more diversity and kind of new examples on what coding can be and who can be a coder in real life. But here are my slides for now, so thank you for this listening.
Super.
Do you have any questions?
Yes,
from
we
the
do
end
have
part?
questions.
Great.
So the question is, did you consider the post-school scenarios in your design process? So what would happen to the students after they graduate?
Yeah, we were, and that's interesting, and we were actually talking about it a lot, that as we were looking into this future of working skills, I think many of these skills actually that this Ecole 42 model is teaching is addressing those skills. So we were just this week talking with the CEO of Hive, Oona Ylänkö, and she said really well that actually Hive as a model is teaching these students how to face this ambiguity and these uncertain times, because they have to ask questions all the time from each other, and they don't have any teachers giving them answers. So maybe they are even better equipped in facing these kind of situations that our kind of whole planet is at the moment with the corona pandemic. So I think it relates a lot with these future skills. Now I have to post-school scenarios. Yeah, so definitely we were thinking that we need these new kind of students that have new ways of thinking and that can solve new kind of problems that the world has to offer for them. So definitely that was one of the topics that we discussed with the clients.
Just to clarify my question, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I was thinking usually it's very hard to engage them, to make them, to motivate them and make them believe that they are actually, as a cleaner or farmer, that they can actually code. But then I was thinking, how can you keep that after school? When you leave, if the school it's making or something to help them to get a job or to build their own things. Because when people are engaging at school, they always think okay, I'm studying because of something that I want to achieve, right? So that's why I made that question.
Okay. Well, maybe to that question, probably the school staff would be better in answering that, because of course I haven't been involved with the students or teaching them. But from what I can say, what they've been doing, I think Hive has been doing really great work in building these partnerships with different kind of organizations. So because the students are doing these real life cases, already doing their studies for different kind of companies, and I think Hive's goal has been to get really different kind of companies to provide these partnerships, so it wouldn't be just kind of tech consultancies, but companies from different kind of fields. So I think that's a really interesting kind of goal that they've had in mind.
See, thank you very much. Just I think sometimes it's really helpful to identify the entire journey, so we just don't drop people on this is a fantastic idea, let's study coding, and then they end up like not being able to find a job or what to do with that knowledge. I'm from Colombia, and at least that happened a lot there, like with people that are trying to motivate these new skills, and then people don't know what to do after. So I just wanted to know if that was included in the design process. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. And as what I've heard about the whole École 42 model is that it actually prepares students a lot better to the work life. So for example, in Paris, I think the students are kind of dragged out from the school to work. So they're really, like, companies really want the students who have gone through this specific school model for coding, or that's what I've heard. So I think they are really doing something really well on this kind of end that you are also thinking. So I think that's a really good point.
Thank you very much.
Super. Laura had actually one more interesting question. Were you involved in designing the curriculum?
No, we weren't. So that's something that comes kind of handed out with the school concept. So as said, they have this gamified curriculum that is like a tree that you can kind of proceed in different branches, and I think it's a super interesting model also to teach, but we haven't been involved in that in any way. So that's something that the École 42 model also kind of provides to these schools.
Super. Thank you. There is one question which I'm not sure I understand. I'll just say it and maybe the author would complement it. Did you suggest the school to run Beat Our Game solution as the requirement to apply?
I don't understand the question. Maybe is there someone who, if you are there, who asked the question, maybe you can specify.
Okay, so if there is a question, if not, okay, I would like to thank you on behalf of the audience for the case. That was great, and that was different in a way, but it's also not only about the service, but about the branding and how the different parts of design play together. And there were great insights to learn about. I just started to think about like my misconceptions about the education. This helps a lot. Again, thank you very much. Thank you for joining us. We will be sharing this recording for those who didn't manage to attend. And I just want to invite the audience to join us tomorrow on the marathon as well. The marathon is a long run. Tomorrow it will be me who is presenting, so I will be probably asking some questions to myself. Thank you and welcome, and let's make more great services around the world with the service design. Thank you, Susanna. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing the experience and knowledge.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for the questions and comments and for listening. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.